Hey everybody, and welcome to another instalment of Ask the Chairman. So this is a board game related Q&A session where you can ask me anything you like. Thank you to everybody who asked a question on the last video, and if you want to keep the series going, then please leave a comment below this video and I'll be sure to get them answered in the next video. Now, for some reason, sometimes YouTube hides comments or they don't show up on my apps and things. And if you asked a question and it hasn't showed up in this video, then I can only apologise. And please be sure to ask it again below this video, and hopefully I'll get to it next time. Before I get started on these questions, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so let's start with questions from Keith. So the first question from Keith is, do I have a dedicated games room? Not anymore. So half of my lounge is my games room, where I have a GEEKNSON table and the shelves behind me. So I have three 3x4 Kallaxes, and yeah, that's pretty much my gaming space. The other half is my sofa and TV, etc. At my old house, I did have a designated games room. So I've had to cut down quite a few games since then to make sure it all fits snugly in one place, and I can keep on adding to it without feeling too much pressure. The second question from Keith is, do table hog games irk me? Yes, more and more so, actually. I generally don't like it when you have so much stuff that you start to encroach on other people's space. So yeah, I mean, not massively. It's not going to be a strict deal breaker for me if a game's a table hog or not, but I prefer it to be a bit more concise and reined in. He's also asked, would I like to see additional info on the side of games boxes? I think a suggestion he made was maybe if it's colorblind friendly or not. So that's certainly going to be very relevant for me because I am quite badly colorblind. So having that kind of confirmation on the box would be very useful for me. But other than that, I think I'm quite happy with what's on the game boxes. I have seen at times with smaller filler games and things, they'll have like the scoring breakdown on the side of the box. I think a game called Ohanami had that, which I think is a nice little touch if they can do that and if it's of course relevant to the game itself. But all in all, it's not something I really think about, maybe apart from that colorblind issue. He's also asked, would I rate a game a 10 out of 10 if that game needed a house rule? Now, I only rate 3 games 10 out of 10, full stop. That is El Grande, Trajan and Chinatown. And for me, none of those games need house rules, so I can't really confirm or deny if I would do this. I mean, I suppose if I liked a game enough, I really loved a game, even if I did have to make an easy tweak or two, then I could see myself still giving it a 10 out of 10. But generally speaking, if it needs house rules, then it's probably not going to be a 10 out of 10. But it's not a strict no, but it's not a definite yes either. But thank you very much for the questions, Keith. Ian has asked, what are my thoughts on dungeon crawler style games? Generally speaking, I've not played many of them because you guys probably know I like more Eurocentric style games where dungeon crawlers generally lean onto the kind of a merry trashy style, dice rolling and big campaigns, that style of gameplay. And that's not normally my thing. I like standalone experiences. I don't like having, hordes of content in a box that I have to filter through and set up each time. That for me is a big kind of, very off-putting. So generally speaking, I dismiss every dungeon crawler that comes out. That being said, I have played a couple. Like, for example, I have played Gloomhaven, and despite it not being a game for me, I can certainly see why other people like it. I did quite like the card system, but for me, it's just a bit too onerous and a bit too laborious to set up each time when I'm playing so many different games. If I had a game like that, I want to leave it set up on a table, whereas that's not my style at all. So generally speaking, I'm very inexperienced, but yeah, so I can't really comment beyond that, really. He's also asked, what are my thoughts on Vital Lacerda games? So this is a question I get asked regularly, especially when people notice that I don't have any Vital Lacerda games on my shelves or in my collection at all. So I've only actually played, I believe, 2 Vital Lacerda games, and I didn't like either of them. So the first one was The Gallerist, which I played very early in my kind of board gaming life. I thought it was just a convoluted mess. And the second one was Mercado de Lisboa, which was an abstract game, which was, to be honest, half a game. I thought it was quite boring and dull. So generally speaking, I am leaning away from ultra heavy games. I'm not willing to kind of put up with the fiddiness and rules exceptions. And for me, from my kind of glance on his games, it seems like they are very front heavy, lots to be learned before you even play the game. That's just not something I'm interested in. If somebody could teach a game really concisely, then I'd give it a go. But am I going to sit there and play a very overwrought game for 3 hours now? Probably not. So I'm probably not going to pick up any of his games anytime soon, unfortunately. But thank you for the questions, Ian. Hudson has asked, what are my favourite Reiner Knizia games? So at the moment, I believe my highest rated ones are Babylonia, Ra, Havilandi. Have I got any others here? Chin is one that I love as well. Municipium is one that I love. High Society. There are absolutely tons of Knizia games that I have in my collection. He's probably maybe my first or second favourite designer of all time. Even more recent games like Marabunta is a game that I think is fantastic. So yeah, those are some of my favourite Knizia games, and I've probably missed out on some glaringly obvious ones as well, being so prolific. But Reiner Knizia, an absolute genius of design. Thank you for your question, Hudson. Sean has asked, do I enjoy a game more if I am the one to teach it? And this is categorically yes. I do enjoy teaching games, and I feel much more comfortable teaching games than learning games from other people, unless they're simpler. I don't like being taught games by other people, to be honest, because my mind seems to run astray and then start filling in gaps which probably are not even correct. So I kind of jump to assumptions a lot because I've learned and taught so many games. I sometimes assume the way that games are designed, and then that ends up biting me on the ass later when I play it. So, all in all, I do like teaching games, and I much prefer teaching games than being taught games. He's also asked, do I enjoy a game more if I win it? No, not particularly. To be honest, sometimes if I teach a game for the first time and I win it for the first time, I normally find that puts other players off because it feels like I've maybe have pulled the wool over their eyes in some capacity. But generally speaking, if I teach a game and for the first time I don't win it, because I'm always trying to make sure that everybody is playing the game correctly. So there's that as well. So, but yeah, definitely not a fact that I enjoy a game less if I lose the game at all. I don't mind. If a game's good, it's good. Some of my favourite games I've hardly won at all. I've mentioned before that I think I've ever won a game of Rumble Nation. It's one of my favourite games of all time. I think I've won Trajan maybe a couple of times, and that's, again, my second favourite game of all time. So definitely not a fact that I'll enjoy a game more if I win it. He's asked me, what is the difference between luck and randomness? Now, I've not really thought about this question, and there might be a definitive answer. I'm not quite sure. For me, if I was to categorise luck, for example, if I was to play a luck-based game, say Rapido, which is one of my favourites, I know the odds of my luck going into those decisions that I'm making. Do I want to roll the dice one more time and risk going bust, or do I want to push my luck and continue going forward? That for me is luck, and that can be a good factor of luck. Randomness for me is a game where I've just got no way of controlling what's going to happen. Think of games like, I don't know, Flux or Exploding Kittens. These styles of games where anything can happen at any time, and you've got very little control over what you want to do. So luck, I like the idea of understanding the probability of something happening and then committing to that or not. Whereas randomness, everything is out of your control, and you're gonna get blown in the direction that the game wants to put you in. So that's how I would categorise it. I'd be interested to hear how you guys categorise the difference between luck and randomness. But thank you for your questions, Sean. Some really good ones there. Richard has asked, which two-player games do myself and my girlfriend rate best? To be honest, my girlfriend has very recently got into board gaming. She's kind of dipped her toe into the hobby. We've not played that many games at all. If you mean two-player only games, some of the ones we've played are Marabunta, which I've mentioned already, War Chest are ones that we've enjoyed. Believe it or not, the games that she's enjoyed most so far is a game called Medici, the dice game, which is another Knizia game, and the dice game version of Medici. That's her favourite game. So, everyone has their own taste, but that's the ones that she enjoys. He's asked, which games do I enjoy solo? So I very rarely play solo games, but there are a couple that I have enjoyed and played. Some of the ones that stand out are Spirit Island. I thought Spirit Island was way better solo than it was working as a team. And I also like, on the different end of the weight spectrum, I like GEEKNSON Clever as a solo game as well. And makes a really good app and something you can play on an aeroplane or something. So yeah, those are a couple there. And I'm sure sooner or later I'll make a top 10 list of my favourite solo games, which is going to be very unlike anybody else's, I think, because I have a very niche taste when it comes to solo gaming. He's asked, have I played Clans of Caledonia? Yes, I have, quite a long time ago. I liked it. I certainly didn't love it. And I do recall when I acquired Terra Mystica, I liked Terra Mystica a lot more than I liked Clans of Caledonia. And if you were to ask me why, I'm not even quite sure I could articulate why. I just did. He's asked, which board game channels do I watch and or rate highly? So I've worked with the Broken Meeple before, Luke Hector. I really like his content. I think he makes some really interesting content and is certainly not scared to say if he likes or dislikes a game. And just in terms of quantity, I do like the Dice Tower. They put a lot of stuff out there, and definitely things can pop up on my radar that I didn't know about through the Dice Tower. But to be honest, now they've had a lot of new reviewers on there. I don't rate a lot of them, to be honest, but I do like Z Garcia. I think he's I think our tastes overlap quite a lot. He likes the French designers a bit more than I do, but generally speaking, I do like his taste and the way he talks about games. Other content creators, not many, to be honest. I did like Back of the Shelf, but I think they've stopped now. But other than that, not really. I'm the best. The other one is, where do you hunt for rarer games? To be honest, I don't actively hunt for them. Sometimes if they pop up on like Facebook groups, I'll notice them and snap them up quickly if I can. Maybe sometimes I'll do a sparing moment eBay search to see if a game's on there for an affordable price. But there aren't actually that many rarer games I'm on the hunt for at the moment, and more often than not, they end up coming around and getting reprinted anyway, even if that takes years. But yeah. Thank you, Richard. Great questions there. Morcar has asked, what games do I feel could be streamlined to make me like it more? So there's probably a ton of these. Some of the games that initially popped into my mind were a game called Burano, which was actually quite a nice, ultra heavy Euro actually, but I did like a lot of the mechanisms in there. But it had a ton of kind of side mechanisms that just did not need to be there and did not add anything to the experience at all. That goes for Stronghold as well. So Stronghold, a great idea of a game where it's a two-player heavy Euro where it replicates a siege battle. So there's an attacking player and a defending castle player, and you're playing cards and things and moving cubes around. But it's so overwrought and convoluted, so many rules within rules, it's just an absolute bloated mess. Could be easily stripped back and made fun. And the third one I've mentioned is Tricarion, a game that I was definitely a very near miss for me, I'd say. I like the game, it could have been great, but again, I think there was a few too tacked on mechanisms that just could have been avoided anyway. So there's just a few games there that popped into my mind. Thank you for the question. The Magus has asked, do I see a problem with reviewers being cozy with publishers? Do I see a problem with it? I mean, it is what it is, I suppose. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. I think, generally speaking, board game fans are very intelligent. You can see right through the inauthenticity of these creators a lot of the time. If they're in bed with the creators or the publishers, it's so obvious because they don't hide it at all. They don't have a single negative critique or even slight critique to say about these games. Everything is great. Everything's wonderful. And again, it's very inauthentic and transparent, I think. Now, personally, I have a reasonable relationship with a couple of publishers, not many at all, and generally speaking, they're very small ones. And I've not had any hesitation in saying I don't like their games. My loyalty is to you guys overall. It's not loyal to the publishers at all. Yes, it sometimes puts you in a little bit of an awkward situation, but you have to be strong enough to deal with that. But, is it a problem? Maybe, but ultimately, I think people know what they're getting into when they watch these videos. At least I hope they do. And he also said, do I see parallels with the computer game industry? I don't know really. I'm not involved in that sphere at all. I know nothing about computer games. I think the last computer game I played was from probably 7 years ago, so I don't even know what computer games are out there at the moment. And just a final comment on that, I think something that the publishers really underestimate is negative reviews, or reviews with criticism in them, because a lot of my subscribers that I've noticed might have a polar opposite taste than me. So if I say I don't like a game, there's a good chance that, say, 30% of my audience will like it, and they've told me that. So it's sometimes a negative review can be positive for the publisher, because it's going to show a big demographic of the board game audience that this is a game for them, because they know they don't agree with me. So it is what it is. Again, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. Maybe there needs to be a bit more transparency, saying, I was sent this for free or whatever. But hey, I don't know. I think people generally can judge if people are being true to themselves or not. But thank you for the questions. Brett has asked, what is a game that I like that includes my least favourite mechanism? So there are a few of these. So generally speaking, I do not like kind of resource gathering mechanisms where you collect things and then cash them in against contracts. I find that incredibly dull. But a game called Finca, I really do like the way that one works, where you are pretty much just doing that, but it has a few little twists to make it interesting. I don't like trick-taking at all in general, but I do like Jiraku. In fact, I love Jiraku, and the trick-taking part of that is very interesting. And generally speaking, I don't like dexterity games either, but there are a couple I like, and I love Rafter 5, and I like Throw Pole Through as well. Some dexterity mechanisms there that, again, I normally bounce hard off of. And in polar opposite to that, he's asked a game that I don't like that has a mechanism that I do like, or do normally enjoy. So, I like route building style games. I have games like Caesar's Empire. I love that style of tangible road building and connecting things together. But I don't like Ticket to Ride. I don't like the rummy style drafting, and I hate the negative points of having cards left in your hand at the end of the game. And even some of the blocking, I just find it frustrating more than anything. So I don't like Ticket to Ride. And also, I generally like Mancala mechanisms, but I don't like Five Tribes at all. So, well, I say not at all. I don't think much of Five Tribes, but that obviously has that Mancala mechanism involved. So a couple of examples there, but again, great questions, Brett. Thank you very much. Matt has asked, which mechanisms do I find the most difficult to teach? I can't really think of any immediately. Would you call it a mechanism? But I find the social deduction games very difficult to teach, because normally there's a lot of information thrown at you at once. If you're playing with new gamers, they've not played games like that before, and they have pressure on their shoulders because they need to know what their role does, but they're scared of asking because they don't want to reveal which role they are, and then the game plays and then they make a mistake and everything falls flat. So yeah, they're generally games where you need to make the mistakes before you know how to play it properly. So sometimes you just need to commit, make those mistakes, and then as I said, play it properly. But yeah, I generally struggle to teach those styles of games, but I think that probably goes hand in hand with a style of game like that. Bradley has asked, how do I stop components from being disorganized due to storing games vertically? I just used plastic bags to keep everything separated. Simple as that. Thank you, Bradley. Mike has asked, what is the most unique mechanism that I have both enjoyed and hated? So one of the most unique games I've ever played is a game called Maud im Arosa, which is where you're taking these cubes, you're dropping them in this big cardboard tower, and you're trying to guess how far down that tower the cube has fallen. The game was awful. It was one of the worst games I've ever played, but I give credit to the game for trying to be unique. Another game that I think is unique that I really do enjoy is Picture Perfect, where you are trying to organise all these different character standees in a particular order based on their individual wants and needs. It has a degree of memory to it, but I think the game does feel very unique, and I do enjoy that one. He's also asked what are my current Grail games. I'm not sure if I have any at the moment. So yeah, I don't think I have any. So there we go. Thank you for the questions. Ziv has asked, what are my thoughts on Through the Desert? So if you don't know what Through the Desert is, it is a Reiner Knizia route building style game that has recently been reprinted actually, or is just about to be sent out to Kickstarter backers. It's an older game. It's abstract strategy where you're putting these camels out and trying to section off parts of the board and cut other people off. Now, I've only played this game, I think, once, and this was about 6 or 7 years ago when I was into very heavy Euro games. And at the time, you can probably imagine when I was, for me, the more rules, the merrier back then. And this game for me was very underwhelming because I thought, well, where's the mechanisms here? What are we doing? So I gave it about a 6 out of 10 back then. I did actually back the most recent one because my tastes have changed so dramatically, and I love these minimalist style games now that I think if I am to play this one again, I think the rating could go up quite drastically. So very excited to get my copy of Through the Desert. And he's also asked, is Through the Desert different enough from Babylonia, which is my favourite Knizia game? Yes, it certainly is. And Babylonia does have that route building thing, but you can put your tokens anywhere in Babylonia, whereas Through the Desert you can only, I believe, expand on from an existing chain. And the way the scoring works is completely different. The Voice of Fox has asked, are there any games that I initially dismissed that I grew to enjoy? There are probably loads of these, but a few that popped to my mind were, Azul I didn't like at first. I remember playing it again quite a while ago, but I played it more recently and I enjoyed it way more than I remembered. Ship Shape was one that I was maybe lukewarm on to start with, and now I really enjoyed the game. And also Flea Market, which is an older game, a very lucky game, but I thought is okay at best, and now I think it's a really cool game. So those are games that I kind of dismissed, but I certainly grew to enjoy them. He's also asked, do I ever play solo modes? Even to learn the game, very rarely. As I said earlier, solo gaming is not my thing in general. There have been exceptions to that. If I was to play a very heavy game now, I would probably try and at least try some of the mechanisms out, but it's not a regular thing that occurs for me. He's asked, which artists sell you on a game? Not many, to be honest, because I am a mechanisms first man, but there are some really familiar artists with those kind of classic Euro games that draw me in, artists like Dennis Lauhausen or Clemens Franz. I love their styles because they've made so many of my favourite style games. I do like some of the more modern artists like Vincent Dutrait and Weberson Santiago. I love his style as well. Tons of great artists in the board game space. We're very spoiled, really. And he's also asked, are there any designers whose games you must play? Must play might be a strong word because I do kind of pre-qualify them by doing a bit of research, but I try to play all Steffenfeld games. I think I've played 95% of them. Simone Luciani games I'll certainly check out. Daniele Tascini games, Knizia games, of course, which there's so many that come out I can barely keep up with them. But yeah, those are some of my favourite designers, which are of course going to prick my ears up and at least make me check out their designs. But thank you for the questions there. And the final couple of questions are from Kishore, I believe that's how I pronounce his name. Apologies if I pronounced it incorrectly. He's asked, are there any plans for me to focus on games from other countries? Not specifically. I'm not going to deliberately look at games from France or Japan, whatever, and go through their catalogues. No, I'm not going to do that. If a game piques my interest, then I'm going to play that one regardless of where it's from. And he's also asked, are there any plans on a series comparing specific games? So I have thought about this, and maybe if there are two very popular games, I would compare them. Semi-recently I did that for Heat and Flamme Rouge. To be honest, a lot of the comparable games are very modern, and then there's an old equivalent, and general audiences aren't really interested in those old games. So I'm not sure if there's that much of a market for that series of videos. but it's something I could certainly do without any kind of regularity, if that makes sense. So if I feel that there's a need to make a video like that, I will do so, but I'm not going to do it deliberately. But again, thank you for the questions, and thank you for everybody for submitting these questions, because that is the end of the list here. So hopefully you have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed answering your fantastic questions. As I said, if you do want to keep the series going, I do need more questions, so please be sure to ask those questions below. If you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.